Tonight, for the first time ever, the U.S. using military planes for deporting migrants. President Trump touring disaster zones, signaling he's open to eliminating FEMA. And the Israeli hostages held by Hamas just hours away from being released. First 4 days after President Trump signed his executive order, the Trump administration now using military C-17s to airlift migrants out of the country. New images from inside the aircraft of migrants in restraints. And 1,500 U.S. troops begin their deployment to the southern border. More than 500 undocumented migrants arrested in multiple cities over the last 24 hours, including New York and Boston. Martha Raddatz one-on-one with border czar Tom Homan, his blunt warning about what's to come. Also tonight, President Trump touring disaster areas in North Carolina and California, meeting with hurricane and wildfire victims. Governor Gavin Newsom, a frequent target of the president, greeting him on the tarmac. Trump saying he's open to possibly getting rid of FEMA, while threatening to withhold aid to millions in California. Rachel Scott in the fire zone. The late-night confirmation vote for President Trump's pick to run the Defense Department. Former Fox News host Pete Hegseth. Will he have enough support? Tonight, 4 Israeli soldiers seen on video being taken hostage by Hamas during the October 7th attack, now hours away from being released. In exchange, Israel expected to free about 200 Palestinian prisoners. News tonight about an arrest in connection with the killing of a border agent in Vermont. What we're now learning about the suspects, why authorities had them under surveillance before the shooting. The freighter trapped in the ice on Lake Erie, the Coast Guard trying to help break it free. Nearly 2 years after her death. The Lost Song by Tina Turner, heard for the first time in more than 40 years. And the giant pandas go public at the Smithsonian National Zoo.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Friday night. I'm Whit Johnson in for David. And we begin with major developments on immigration, just days after President Trump declared an emergency at the southern border. A military buildup underway. The first of some 1,500 active duty troops have arrived. Marines from Camp Pendleton arriving with heavy equipment and Osprey aircraft. And for the first time, military planes are making deportation flights. This C-17 at Fort Bliss, Texas. Migrants in restraints seen boarding a flight to Guatemala. A new image from inside another flight taking off from Tucson, Arizona. Meantime, the administration saying that arrests are ramping up. More than 500 undocumented migrants arrested in multiple cities over the last 24 hours. And tonight, the president's new border czar, Tom Homan, saying this is only the beginning. ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz leads us off tonight.
Tonight, for the first time, U.S. military aircraft flying undocumented migrants out of the country as President Donald Trump launches his deportation campaign. The White House releasing these pictures, dozens of migrants in chains boarding C-17 aircraft. The flights landing in Guatemala carrying roughly 160 people, men and women.
Deportation's going very well.
Today, the Trump administration's new border czar, Tom Homan, telling me it's only the beginning.
Is that going to be a constant commitment from the U.S. military every single day to take deportees out?
Yes.
This as the military buildup on the border escalates. 1,500 active duty personnel, Army and Marines deploying. Their mission to support enhanced detection and monitoring efforts and repair and replace physical barriers. ABC's Matt Rivers on the ground in San Diego.
So right now these Marines are offloading concertina wire. They're going to bring it right down to the border to reinforce it. It's clearly meant to be a deterrent against future migration. And these kinds of supply flights, we might see a lot more of them over the coming months.
Far from the border, ICE raids and arrests in cities across the country in the days since the president was sworn in, some of them likely long planned, but a clear sign of what's to come. Boston, New York, and Newark, New Jersey. Newark's mayor saying agents raided a small business without a warrant, detaining American citizens in the process.
People were fingerprinted. Pictures of their IDs and face were taken there. When I got this information, I was appalled.
The Trump administration releasing numbers showing 538 arrests over the past 24 hours. The White House saying they're initially targeting undocumented immigrants who have committed violent crimes. But Homan acknowledges not everyone swept up in the raids fits that profile. And he has a stark warning to anyone who's in the country illegally. So is this what we will see every single day, ending in what the president has promised is millions and millions being deported?
Yes, but you can see the numbers steadily increase, the number of arrests nationwide as we open up the aperture. Right now it's concentrating public safety threats, national security threats. That's a smaller population.
So after you do that, then you go after everybody who is there illegally.
If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table, because it's not okay to, violate laws of this country. So if you're in the country illegally, you got a problem. And that's why I'm hoping those who are in the country illegally who have not been ordered removed by the federal judge should leave.
Homan was very clear that those committing violent crimes will be deported first, and acknowledges that the show of force, these strong warnings to all undocumented immigrants, are meant to send a message that they should self-deport, since it would take a very long time and massive amounts of manpower and money to deport an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants. Whit?
Martha Raddatz, thank you. And Martha will have much more of her one-on-one interview with border czar Tom Homan Sunday on This Week. Meantime, President Trump at the scenes of two American disasters. As ABC News has learned, he is expected to sign an executive order on FEMA reform. The president touching down in Los Angeles late today, met by California Governor Gavin Newsom, then touring the devastation of the Palisades fire, threatening to place conditions on providing federal aid. ABC's senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is traveling with the president.
Tonight, President Donald Trump touring the destruction from the Palisades fire on a cross-country swing through the disaster zones, raising the possibility of eliminating FEMA altogether. The president promising immediate aid for North Carolina's recovery from Hurricane Helene, but creating conditions for California, insisting there needs to be changes to water management in the wake of the devastating fires, and for the first time, demanding state voter ID laws in exchange for disaster relief.
In California, we want them to have voter ID so the people have a voice, because right now the people don't have a voice because you don't know who's voting, and it's very corrupt. And we also want them to release the water. If they released the water, they wouldn't have had a problem.
Today, California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom greeting Trump on the tarmac.
I have all the confidence in the world we'll work that out.
The president has blasted Newsom's response to the wildfires, repeatedly pushing a false claim that all they had to do was turn on a valve to keep fire hydrants from running dry. Officials have said the water supply wasn't the issue, but the volume required to battle a once-in-a-generation fire event. Newsom today pushing back, saying conditioning aid for American citizens is wrong, adding California pumps as much water now as it could under prior Trump-era policies, and noting California residents already must show ID to register to vote. The president and first lady on their first domestic trip of Trump's second term, also visiting North Carolina, still reeling from Hurricane Helene.
They supported us in record numbers, and I'm supporting them in record numbers too.
The president suggesting he may move to get rid of FEMA and have the states exclusively handle their own emergency response, though it would take an act of Congress to dismantle or reform the agency.
FEMA has really let us down, let the country down, and I don't know if that's Biden's fault or whose fault it is, but we're going to take over and we're going to do a good job.
And with just moments ago, we saw President Donald Trump fly overhead in a chopper. This is just some of the damage the president will be seeing as he surveys these disaster zones. Sources tell me the president is expected to take executive action to establish a task force that will be charged with reviewing FEMA and making any recommended changes. But again, what the bottom line here is that President Trump does not have the authority to eliminate FEMA. That would require an act of Congress. Whit.
Rachel Scott, thank you. And tonight, President Trump's controversial nominee for Defense Secretary, former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, is facing a critical Senate vote. ABC's Jay O'Brien is on Capitol Hill.
Tonight, Pete Hegseth, President Trump's controversial pick to run the Pentagon, hoping to be confirmed by the Senate, but by one of the narrowest margins for any defense secretary in modern history.
Pete's a very, very good man. I hope he makes it.
I hope he makes it.
Hegseth, a former Fox News host and veteran.
We will reestablish trust in our military.
All Democrats expected to vote against him, and 2 Republicans publicly saying no. Senator Lisa Murkowski saying on top of allegations of excessive drinking and sexual misconduct, which Hegseth has denied, she questions his management skills and is troubled by his admission of multiple infidelities. Murkowski saying, I believe that character is the defining trait required of the Secretary of Defense and must be prioritized without compromise. Also at issue, Hegseth's comments that women shouldn't be allowed to serve in combat, a position he walked back in his confirmation hearing.
Yes, women will have access to ground combat roles, given the standards remain high.
But Senator Susan Collins saying she's not convinced his views have changed.
How tight do you think this vote's going to be?
Oh, it's going to be tight. 51's tight, and that's what it was yesterday. It could even be 50, who knows?
And that vote ending in dramatic fashion tonight. Ultimately, 3 Republican defections, including Mitch McConnell with an 11th hour no vote. Vice President J.D. Vance having to come in, break the tie, and ultimately Pete Hegseth confirmed as the next Secretary of Defense. Whit.
Jay O'Brien, thank you. Overseas tonight, we're just hours away from a new hostage and prisoner exchange. Hamas set to release 4 Israeli soldiers. Israel expected to free about 200 Palestinian prisoners. And tonight, the difficult images from both sides of the divide. ABC's Tom Sufi Burridge in Jerusalem tonight.
This is the chilling video. Bloodied female Israeli soldiers taken hostage by Hamas during the October 7th attack. And tonight, 4 of them are just hours away from coming home. Hamas saying it will free Karina Ariev, Daniela Gilboa and Naima Levy, all 20 years old, as well as 19-year-old Liri Albag tomorrow. Naima's mother pleading for this moment.
I just want to be back home and have Naima back home.
33 hostages, including 2 Americans, are expected to be freed in the first phase of the deal during a 6-week truce. In exchange, Israel is to release another 200 Palestinian prisoners tomorrow. With the ceasefire holding, families inside Gaza returning home to staggering destruction. Mahmoud Abul Dawfa says the bodies of his wife and all 5 of his young children are still under the rubble of his bombed-out home. I hope I can bring them out, he says, and bury them.
Well, if all goes to plan, those 4 hostages could be freed as early as tomorrow morning, and then the Palestinian prisoners should be released.
And so much hope this plan holds. Tom, thank you. Back here tonight, new developments in the deadly shooting of a Border Patrol agent in Vermont. The agent shot and killed during a traffic stop near the Canadian border. 1 suspect was killed in the shootout, a 2nd suspect wounded and now facing charges. Court records showing authorities had them under surveillance nearly a week before the shooting. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, a Washington state woman is facing charges in the first killing of a Border Patrol agent in more than a decade. Authorities say 21-year-old Teresa Youngblood and Felix Bockholt, a German citizen on an expired visa, engaged police in a hail of gunfire along Interstate 91 in Coventry, Vermont, about 20 miles from the Canadian border. 44-year-old Border Patrol agent David Chris Mayland died later at a local hospital.
I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to Agent Mayland's family, friends, and colleagues.
According to a federal affidavit, investigators had been conducting periodic surveillance of the pair for more than a week after an employee at a nearby hotel reported them checking in dressed in all-black tactical-style clothing, with Youngblood carrying an apparent firearm in an exposed carry holster. When authorities made contact, they say the pair told them they were in the vicinity to look at purchasing property. Buckholt was killed, Youngblood wounded. Inside the vehicle, police say they found a cache of weapons, body armor, and 2-way radios. Tonight, this case is a mystery. Why did that traffic stop end in such a violent confrontation? Whit.
Still a lot of questions. Pierre Thomas, thank you. Next tonight, President Trump has revoked the security detail assigned to Dr. Anthony Fauci, according to sources. Dr. Fauci was the president's top COVID advisor during his first term and has faced regular threats on his life for years. Trump has also revoked security for 3 other former advisors who faced threats from Iran. In North Carolina today, Trump said they all have made a lot of money. They can hire their own security, too. And in Washington today, thousands of people turned out for the annual March for Life rally, the first march since Republicans won the White House and both houses of Congress, and 24 hours after President Trump issued full pardons to 23 anti-abortion rights activists convicted of blockading abortion clinics. Vice President Vance and congressional leaders addressed the crowd. In a pre-recorded message, President Trump pledged to push for further restrictions on abortion. When we come back, the freighter trapped in the ice, the Coast Guard trying to break it free. And nearly 2 years after her death, the lost song from Tina Turner now revealed. Tonight, a Coast Guard cutter now trying to free a cargo ship trapped in the ice on Lake Erie. The 663-foot freighter surrounded by ice, unable to move. It's been stuck near Buffalo for more than 48 hours. The crew of 17 is reportedly fine, and the ship has not been damaged. The freighter will be there at least another day. When we come back, Tina Turner's lost song and the giant pandas meet the public. To the Index now, and nearly 2 years after her death, a lost Tina Turner song is now being heard for the first time. Hot for You Baby was originally recorded more than 4 decades ago. It was cut from her hit album Private Dancer. The master discovered as producers prepare to release a 40th anniversary edition of the album. The lost song will be included. When we come back, the pandas make their long-awaited debut in D.C.
ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, sponsored by Chewy.
Finally tonight, the giant pandas meet the public at the National Zoo.
Tonight, the remarkable sight, the pandas from China making their long-awaited public debut at the Smithsonian National Zoo in Washington, D.C. 3-year-old Bao Li now in his new home. Qing Bao, also 3 years old, eating an apple today, a carrot too. And of course, both munching on lots of bamboo, 100 pounds of it every day. The bamboo grown and harvested about 70 miles away. Local kindergartners welcoming the pandas early this morning. Qing Bao climbing a tree, the children calling out Bao Li's name. Thousands of visitors expected this weekend, with many more watching on the zoo's Panda Cam, 40 cameras giving people around the world an up-close look. It's all part of a revival of the so-called panda diplomacy between China and America after a pause in 2023. Pandas were sent home to China, but tonight, they're back. The pandas arriving from China last October, touching down at Dulles International Airport in a Boeing aircraft they call the FedEx Panda Express. The panda picture right on the side. The two in these custom crates, a police escort right to the zoo in Washington, crowds lining the streets. In quarantine and closely monitored by their care teams, but now they are ready. The zoo calling this a celebration and a new chapter of their more than 5-decade-long panda conservation program.
They're adorable, but they're also rare. It's a success story. We are winning the conservation war with giant pandas. Like, there are more of them in the wild because of this. And so people come here and they're part of our success.
And we're all cheering on that success. Great to see the pandas back. Thanks so much for watching tonight. I'm Wade Johnson in New York. For David and all of us here, have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.